Chapter 4. It was like the first day of the rest of Jeff's life, and he felt it. He took one look at himself in the black Houston Fire Department t-shirt and smiled. It felt good. He grabbed his keys and his jacket and left the apartment. As he drove through the early morning light down the streets of the city he loved, his mind drifted back through all the turns that had led him to this moment. A few he smiled at, more than one made his heart pang, but each formed a small brushstroke in the picture he now saw before him. At the station, he parked and walked to the door as the phrase, "This is it," tracked through his mind. And with that, he pushed in. "Yeah, well, you already owe me your wife and kids, so what's the point of even making that bet?" the Hispanic guy said as he and the other guy worked pulling down a long, grimy cotton hose next to the truck. "My wife and kids?" The other guy carefully fed the hose off the top. "Just tell me when you're coming to get them, and I'll be sure to have their stuff packed and on the front porch waiting for you." "You would." At that moment, the door that hadn't fully closed behind Jeff slammed, and both gazes snapped to him. "Hey, it's the new guy." His friend straightened and extended a hand. "Welcome, Hunter Witkowski." "Jeff Taylor." Jeff extended his own hand and a smile. The Hispanic man jumped off the bumper and over the hose, wiped his hand, and extended it. "Dante Ramirez." "Nice to meet you, Dante," Jeff said with a nod. Not really knowing what to do next, Jeff looked back to the station behind. "Come on," Dante said. "I'll show you around." "These are the ones for the billboard," Kurt said, as if he might be shot at any moment for saying the wrong thing. "And here's the newest price scale for the Chronicle." The more she looked, the more Lisa's head hurt. "Wait, on this billboard, what are you trying to get across anyway? I mean, this is confusing me, and I'm just sitting here." "Well, the whole 'we've got every kind of carpet you've ever even thought about putting down' angle just came to me." "Just came to you? Like that?" Lisa looked up, feeling defeat right behind her. "At 70 miles an hour, do you know how many words people can read?" Kurt shifted in the chair. "No." "I'll give you a hint." She looked down and quickly counted the words. "It's less than 13 plus all this address and the phone number and the website information. You can't put all of this on there. It doesn't work like that." "Well, I just thought they needed contact information." "No, this is information overload." She pushed the board back to him. "Tighten it up. I don't want more than 10 words, and address or whatever is part of that. Period." 10? But... She cut him off by looking at her watch. "I don't have time to hold your hand right now. I've got a meeting." Even as she talked, she stood and straightened her navy suit jacket. "I want the new one on my desk before you leave tonight." Fixing the knot of her hair, she stood in front of the tiny mirror off to the side of her desk before she ran a finger across the edge of her deep red lipstick. "But this one took me..." On her heel she turned. "By the time you leave." With that, she grabbed her black leather notepad, her purse, and her keys, and left Kurt still standing in her office. Quickly, she strode past Sherry's desk. "I'll be back." "Good luck," Sherry called after her, and Lisa threw a hand in the air in answer. Once in the car, she checked her watch again, fluffed the bangs on her upsweep, and twisted the starter. She needed this one. This one was her ace. Around Hayes, she was sure she could build the rest of the program. The first 2 tasks were learning people's names and getting acquainted with the equipment. This truck was far and away better than the model they had trained on, and Jeff was relieved to note that although he was new, the others had all been together for a while. At least it wouldn't be a spin the dial to see who shows up kind of program. Already he felt right at home. Dante and Hunter kept him entertained with their non-stop Abbott and Costello routine, and the best part was that to participate, he really didn't have to say so much as a single word. They were in the middle of refilling air tanks, listening to Dante explain why Levi's come in so many different styles, when Jeff saw the flash of the window of the front door swing across the wall behind him. At first, when he looked over to the threshold, he thought it was just his brain creating some kind of mirage in the sunshine. Then, the fact that clearly this was all a dream he was having flashed across his consciousness, but not one rational thought was able to erase his heart magnetizing his gaze to that door. To her. The dark hair upswept, the curve of her suit at the slim waist, the heels. It was, and yet it couldn't be. In shock, he ducked behind the truck, busying himself with the first tank that attached itself to his hand. Excuse me, she said, and there wasn't a part of him that still believed he was wrong about who was standing in that doorway. Hi, Dante said smoothly as Jeff cowered behind the truck, imagining the scene because he couldn't see it. Something we could help you with? I'm looking for Captain Hayes, she said, and the lilt of her voice tap-danced across Jeff's heart. He closed his eyes, feeling every wisp of it. Oh, he's up in his office. Come on, I'll show you, Dante said. Jeff heard the pings of her heels as she climbed the meshed wire metal stairs across the station from where he stood. Lisa. It was Lisa. She was here. Why was she here? And what on earth should he do next? Dustin would know what to do, but Dustin wasn't here. Thank goodness. Jeff peeked out from behind the truck to see the polished navy weave of her skirt back high above him on the landing. Lest she turn around and see him, he ducked back and flattened himself against the back of the truck. Options rushed over options, all of them viable had he been anybody else. Maybe he could just conveniently be hanging around when she came back down. But how long would she be up there? And what did she want with Hayes? Advertising didn't exactly lend itself to visiting fire stations on a regular basis. Hey, Jeff, Hunter said from the top of the truck. Want to help me with this? Oh, sure. Jeff reached for the rung and pulled himself up just as she disappeared into the office. Yes, he could just conveniently be hanging around. That would work. But then what? He didn't miss the looks back up to the door that Dante made as he returned down the steps and strode to the truck. 2 vaults, and he joined them up top. Now there's a set of chrome I wouldn't mind shining, Dante said, fanning himself as if the fire station had itself just been set ablaze. Nice hooks and ladders, Hunter agreed, and the outsides of Jeff's ears went hot. He crossed his arms. What did you need? Oh, here. Hunter bent to pick up a piece of supply hose. Help me with this. It was nice to have something to do, something to make them stop talking, and something so his heart wouldn't actually pound right out of his chest. As they worked, his own gaze continually traveled up those steps. They were right, of course, she was gorgeous, but his memory and his heart said she was far, far more than that. Right now, I'm putting together a proposal to get the schools interested, Lisa said when Captain Hayes looked at her as if he might throw her out before she got him talked into anything. We've done the traditional businesses talk to the top kids for hundreds of years. We just wanted to try something new with this thing. I thought you were in advertising. The scowl on the captain's face deepened the wrinkles lining his face. I am, but my uncle works for Mr. Cordell, and, well, he thought it would be good advertising for their firm, except their corporate agency thought it was just too far out of what they wanted to do. So my uncle suggested me, and here I am. And here you are. Hayes crossed his arms. And you want me to come and speak at this little gathering of yours? Well, yes, unless you want to send someone in your place. Like I said earlier, nothing is really set yet. We're just putting out feelers to see what's possible on this thing. I don't know. I don't exactly make a habit of booking speaking engagements. Lisa's heart fell with her face. Her ace was slipping away. However, Hayes pulled one of his drawers open and slipped a small card out of it. Here's the number for Vincent Fletcher with the downtown PD. You give him a call. If you can talk Fletch into this thing, I'll consider it. Oh, thank you, sir. She took the card, wondering when she had become so attached to the inner workings of the city of Houston. I'll give him a call this afternoon. Hayes smiled with a secret behind his gray eyes, and Lisa's gaze caught on it. Something in his eyes said he had just won clemency. Before he told her outright that he would jump from the Transco Tower before he'd get up in front of a group of high schoolers, she stood and offered her hand. "Thanks so much for your time." "Let me know what Fletch says," Hayes said with that smile she didn't like very much. "I'll let you know." In the deepest part of his gut, Jeff heard the click of the upstairs door. He had been listening for nothing else during the past half hour. The waiting was enough to make his nerves fray. The instant he heard it, however, his gaze snapped to the figure in navy as it turned and quietly closed the door a story above. Panic gripped him in a tight fist and swung him off the top of the truck and down to the concrete below, where his legs barely caught his weight. "She's back," he heard Dante whisper from above, and instantly Jeff grabbed an air tank and put it into the truck. The heels clicked down the stairs, pinging across his heart like a hammer on spikes. Concrete. She was down, and his breathing stopped. "Get what you were after?" Dante asked, and all of Jeff's motions stopped. "Yeah, I did, thanks," she said, and in his mind he saw the smile that had spent the last 5 days floating through his dreams. "See you later," Dante called. "Yeah." The door clicked open. "Later." And the door closed along with Jeff's eyes. Ugh, if only he had an ounce of courage, he would run after her. Then again, if he had any courage at all, he would have long ago had her number. "Taylor," Hunter called from the top, and when Jeff looked up, all he saw was a roll of hose dropping on him fast. "Catch!" "She's gone. Get back to work," his brain screamed as he fought not to fall over the folds of hose. "She's gone." The only problem was that his heart was screaming the same thing. Truth be told, Lisa had never been all that attached to fire stations or police departments. No, for way the most part, she had tried to avoid them at all costs. However, as she walked away, she couldn't help but wonder if Jeff had gotten that position he had applied for. A small smile traced across even the doom surrounding her mission. She hoped he had. That soft spot in her heart filled her throat. Jeff somebody in a city of 3 million. It was a given that she would never see him again, and for all the logic of her head saying that was a good thing, she knew in some deep part of her that his name would trace across the expanse of her heart every time she was lucky enough to pass a fire station. Long before his car actually got to it, Jeff noticed the zebra sign as he inched his way up East X Freeway the next morning after work. He smiled at how intricately she had worked the stripes. It was a work of art, even if it wasn't hanging in some stuffy museum. Absent-mindedly, his hand shifted gears down, wondering where she was at this moment. At work? Going home? Somewhere on this very highway? Wherever she was, he knew she would have his heart with her forever. It was a full 48 hours before Lisa slowed down enough to think about him again. The preceding hours had been a mishmash of wedding gowns, campaign concepts, and toasts. They were all intertwined so that her brain was having a hard time sorting them all out. However, as she stood at the top step of the church, watching her sister look so in love, her heart drifted back to the sight of his strong arms and those beautiful pools of blue. In a way, she was glad she hadn't pursued anything. He was probably better as a dream anyway. That way, he hadn't done anything horrible to ruin her perfect picture of him. Who cared that she had no real chance with him? She didn't anyway. Love in the real world was too messy. There were too many things that could get in the way, like what he was really like, and what she was really like. Knowing that, though, made the dream that much better. She would take the dream of him over the reality of all the guys she had ever actually known in a heartbeat. That understanding only solidified when Luke, Corey's best bud in the whole world, the classy guy her sister's new husband had picked for a best man, chose the moment she had potatoes and brown gravy 2 inches from her mouth to slide his hand under the table and onto her knee. A barely muffled gasp jumped from her throat as the potatoes leaped from her fork and landed squarely on the center of her cream skirt with a swirl of vines and pink flowers. "Lisa?" Haley said with concern, looking down the head table. "Are you okay?" Yeah," Lisa said, wishing she could knock Mr. Hand into another wedding party. "Here, let me help you." Luke's tone dropped as he reached for his napkin. "I've got it." Lisa slid backward as anger slashed through the words. "I'm fine. I'll just be in the ladies' room." "Lise, are you sure?" Haley asked her sisters, retreating back. In the bathroom, Lisa turned the water on full blast before dabbing and then scrubbing at the gravy. Great. With no small amount of work, the stain finally looked like it was at least part of the whole general color scheme of the skirt. The only problem was the water spot didn't. Trying not to think about the logistics of her undertaking, she wiped the side of the sink off, sat down carefully, and hit the button on the hand dryer. Yeah, this was exactly where she wanted to spend her evening. If Luke so much as looked at her wrong, he was in for a rude awakening. It took more time than she wanted, but her skirt finally dried about the time her hatred for all things male reached a boiling point. With a look in the mirror to straighten and perfect, she put her head high and walked back out to rejoin the festivities. However, she had barely sat down when Luke laid a casual arm across the back of her chair and leaned over to her ear. "It's almost time for the toast. You want to go first, or should I?" he asked in a whisper that sent puffs of air skittering across her neck. You can go first," she said, fighting to smile. "Good." His proximity hadn't shifted. "I like to go first." Her smile faded as he stood, and she choked back a scream. In seconds, the crowded hall was laughing at something he had said, and Lisa willed herself to just get through this. When he sat back down, Luke laid that same hand on her, only this time it missed her knee and landed several inches higher. "Your turn." Putting her head high, she pushed his hand away, pushed away from the table, and stood. She picked up her glass and turned to the happy couple, vowing that if Luke so much as brushed across her backside as she did, she would douse him with the sparkling liquid in her glass. "Haley," Lisa said, and her sister's gaze made all the bad things slide from her mind. "I wish you luck, and I wish you love. I want you to know I am here for you always." A chorus of "ah" sounded through the hall. "And Corey, if you hurt her, I'll kill you," she said, and although there was a measure of levity in her voice, she knew there was just enough seriousness to get her point across. She raised her glass. "To Haley and Corey." "Haley and Corey," rang out around her. For a full 2 hours, Lisa had managed to stay out of Luke's vicinity. However, when the third dance of the evening arrived, she knew she had run out of time to run. "You know," Luke pulled her closer even as she strained to push him away. "They say there are 2 couples that make it home together on a wedding night, the bride and groom, and the 2 that stand up for them." "Oh, really?" Lisa could smell the alcohol on his breath as her brain threatened mutiny if she didn't figure out a way to get away from him soon. Too bad that's not going to be happening tonight. "Why not?" His hand tightened around hers as his arm did the same. "I'm free, you're free. We can be free together." "Because I think you're a jerk," Lisa said as Haley and Corey danced by, all smiles. "Don't get any ideas, Lisa," Haley teased. "Don't worry," Lisa called after them, but they were gone. "You smell so good." Luke leaned into her until the only space that could be counted as hers was that underneath her rib cage. "What's that perfume, anyway?" "Desire," Lisa said, and then immediately wished she had thought to lie. Fitting, don't you think?" She wrenched her arm between them for breathing room, if nothing else. "I wouldn't know." The music picked that moment to end, and for half a second she thought the torture was over. Unfortunately, Luke didn't get the same message. Like a steel trap, his arm wrapped around her, and, barring pitching him to the floor and running, She didn't see a good way to get away. The next song started, and he never so much as asked her before she was again fighting against the press of his body. Not one part of her wanted to know how long he was planning to keep this up, or what ingenious designs he had for the remainder of the evening. Not one. By midnight, Lisa wasn't sure if it was the hour or the non-sleep she had gotten the 2 nights before, but her eyes were in an all-out battle just to stay open. "Well, it's that time." Luke strode over to her and took her hand, which she promptly jerked away from him. "What time?" "Time to take the newlyweds to their car, of course." "I thought I'd just stay here and—" "We're ready," Corey said, his bride's hand tucked in his. "Great, we are too," Luke said, and before Lisa had a chance to realize what was coming, he spun and caught her shoulders under his arm. "Let's get." "Where are you going?" Lisa asked in anger when Luke turned in the opposite direction from the hall after they had dropped their passengers off. Her eyelids felt like they might betray her and close permanently at any moment, but she knew the danger of allowing them that luxury. "The hall's that way." "My place," Luke said, trying to sound smooth. "Just sit back and relax. We'll be there in a second." As if he really thought this was leading somewhere, he reached over and his hand landed across Lisa's knee. No." She pushed his hand away. "We're not. We're going back to the hall." He looked at her in annoyance. "What is your problem?" "Guys," she said, irritation searing her tone. "Guys are my problem. Now take me back, or you're not going to have to wonder who's got a problem." Luke's face fell. "Geez, Corey said you were bad, but he didn't say you were an ice queen." Ice queen. She folded her arms as she pressed herself against the opposite door. She rather liked that title. Jeff's first real call came at rush hour on Monday evening. Getting his employment records in line was a far more daunting task than he had thought it would be when he went in that afternoon, and now he was stuck in wall-to-wall traffic. With a window rolled down, he laid his arm through the opening and drummed his fingers to the static mixed music on the AM radio. It had been a good week, not really exciting, but in his line of work, that was a good thing. The farther he drove up Eastex, however, the slower traffic got. He could just see the zebra-painted billboard in the distance, and he smiled at the thoughts it pulled up. The wedding was over by now, and he wondered how work had gone for her this week. He thought again about Dustin's idea of knocking on every door in her office building, and if it hadn't been so totally not him, he might have considered it. The honking from around him brought him out of his daydreams, and he looked around. Cars were everywhere, and although it was always slow going at this time of day, this was more like no going. In fact, as he looked ahead, nothing seemed to be moving at all. That's when he saw the people almost a mile ahead of him, standing on the right side of the road in one big knot of humanity. There was only one thing that brought great crowds of people out of their cars on a rush-hour drive home: tragedy. His first thought was a wreck. His second, that emergency vehicles were going to have a terrible time getting up on the freeway and to the injured at this time of day. It was a decision, and yet, really, there was no decision at all as he angled his car as far off the side of the road as he could get it, parked it, got out, and sprinted past the now honking and beeping mess. The closer he got, the more he knew it had to be bad for that many people to be standing there. When he reached the first straggler of the group, he asked, "What's going on?" "Somebody's jumping," came the reply, and Jeff's feet shifted up a gear. On the outskirts of the crowd, he pushed through. "Fire department, excuse me, fire department." He felt the gazes of the people he passed, but he pressed on. This was no time to be shy about his place in the world. Excuse me. When he finally broke through to the other side of the crowd, all the training he had amassed suddenly seemed horribly inconsequential. There, standing on the other side of the concrete railing, was a young man, perhaps a decade younger than he himself, or maybe more. His arms were stretched out behind him, holding on to the concrete wall, but with one look, Jeff could see the precariousness of that hold. With no time to review any manuals, he stepped past the crowd and approached the scene slowly. It was as though the world around him was in mayhem, and he was in the eye of the storm. "Hey," Jeff said, as if he was walking up to Dustin to say good morning. The young man, wild-eyed and wary, spun to look at him, and Jeff saw his hold slip. "Stay away! I'm going to jump! I swear I will!" Jeff held up both hands to signal that he wasn't coming any closer. "It's cool, man. I'm staying right here." He took a breath to calm the adrenaline rushing through him. "You know, jumping isn't going to solve anything." The kid's gaze turned back to the street below. "Yes, it will." A fight was the last thing he wanted to start. "Okay, well, then what's so bad that this is the answer?" "Everything." "Everything, huh? Yeah, well, I'm sorry, what was your name?" The gaze was back with more anger this time. "My name?" "Yeah, I mean, if we're going to have this little conversation, it might be nice if I at least knew your name." "Oh." The gaze turned back to the wind. It's Parker." "Okay, Parker. Well, it's nice to meet you. I'm Jeff." One slow inch at a time, he moved closer. "Hey, man, can we talk about this? I mean, come on, you don't want to do this." "Yes, I do. I'm sick of life." "Oh, really? Tell me one thing that's so bad it's worth this." A pause as the horns continued to sound from every level around them. "Why should I tell you? You don't care. You're just like all the rest of them." "The rest of who?" Jeff heard the wail of a siren blending in with the horns, and he knew help was on the way. However, they were still too far to get here in time if he didn't keep talking. "Tell me who you're talking about, Parker." "Everyone. Mom, Dad, the kids at school." "They don't care about you?" "No, they'll all be glad when I'm gone. Then they can pick on somebody else." "Pick on somebody? Who? The kids at school?" Slowly the edges of the light brown hair moved up and down over the dark black glasses frames. "Oh, I see. So you're going to give them the power to kill you, too?" Jeff asked pointedly, hating every gust of wind that brushed past them. "What?" Parker turned to Jeff, taken aback by the statement. "Well, they push you around at school, right? What do? Make fun of you?" The gaze turned back to the street as the head nodded. "And trash your stuff?" The nodding continued. "And make it so nobody else wants to be your friend?" Every word was hitting the mark. "And so your answer to that is to hand them the power to push you off the edge of a bridge. Good plan." The nodding stopped as Jeff looked up and saw the paramedics running up the shoulder from the other direction. Instinctively, he put his hands up to slow them down. In Parker's state, it would take only one surprise to send him plummeting to the asphalt 4 stories below. One heartbeat, and Jeff made eye contact with the first paramedic that broke through the crowd. That one look stopped the young man cold. The paramedic, several inches shorter than Jeff and looking like a cocky jock with his hat turned backward, halted and then approached on soft feet. A silent conversation passed between them, and the paramedic nodded his understanding of the situation. "You don't understand," Parker said from the edge, and both gazes snapped to him. "Then help me," Jeff said softly. "Help me understand." Before he even heard the words, he heard the tears. "I go there every day, and every day it's the same thing. They hate me, so they push me down, and they call me a maggot and a faggot, and they say the only thing I'm really good at is being a punching bag." Jeff looked across at his partner in this rescue, and the ache bled through his eyes as well. "They pull my shorts down in PE, and they throw my clothes out the window, and I never did anything to them. I swear I didn't. I tell them to stop, but they just think it's funny, and they make more fun of me. I told one of the teachers, but he said to suck it up and be a man. Well, I'm tired of being a man. I'm tired of hurting all the time. They can just find somebody else to pick on from now on." "And they will," Jeff said slowly. Instantly, his partner looked over at him in fearful shock. For a second, a question ran through his face, and then Jeff knew he understood. When you're gone tomorrow, they'll find somebody else to pick on, and they won't even remember you. Is that really what you want? He's right, the paramedic said, matching his soft tone. Parker's gaze swung around to him as Jeff's heart caught in his throat. He is. If you jump, you give them the last laugh. Checkmate. They win. The world and Jeff's heart screeched to a halt. Is that what you really want, man? A gust brushed past them, and Jeff held his breath. No, Parker finally said like a breath. I don't know. I'm just so confused. Then this is no time to be making a big decision like this one, Jeff said, sensing the tri-bond that had just formed between them. He took a small step forward. Come on, Parker. Take my hand and come back across. We can work this out, I promise. It's so hard, Parker said, and Jeff saw the hand on the other side release. Parker, he held his hand out, palm up. Just take my hand, okay? Just take my hand and we'll talk about this. One agonizing inch at a time, the hand came across, and finally it touched Jeff's. He could feel the life flowing through that hand, its potential. Good, man. Okay, careful. 1 foot at a time, Parker scaled the concrete wall separating them, and when he was back in the land of the living, Jeff breathed a grateful sigh of relief. Slowly, Parker slid down the concrete to the asphalt as fatigue crowded over his features. Jeff sat on his heels next to the paramedic as the other rescue personnel worked to disperse the crowd. He laid a gentle hand on the bony shoulder of the young teenager. How you doing? You okay? The nod was there, but barely. Good. These guys are going to take care of you now, okay? Sad, frightened eyes looked up at him. You're leaving? No, Jeff said without hesitation. But I don't think you want me checking you out. Doctoring's not really my department. 2 other paramedics broke in as Jeff stood and stepped over to the railing. It was then that he saw the news trucks and the gathering that was now dispersing beneath the bridge. One life, hardly noticed to this point, and yet when the possibility of it leaving the earth arrived, everyone else stopped to take notice. Why was that? Why doesn't anyone stop until it's all over? He breathed out against the air that was blowing in his face. He was lucky you were here, the voice said from behind him, and Jeff turned to see that backward-turned cap. The paramedic, looking even younger than he had a few moments before, held out a fist, and Jeff hit the top of it. I think I was more scared than he was, Jeff admitted. Well, you didn't show it. Then the paramedic held out his hand. A.J. Knight. Jeff Taylor. It was amazing the strength of a friendship formed in a crisis. You with the department? A.J. asked in reference to the little yellow letters on Jeff's t-shirt. Yeah, I just started last week. Cool. We need more like you out here. Just trying to help. Then he looked over to Parker, who was now surrounded by the emergency crew but standing again. I think I'll just go over and see how he's doing. I'll go with you. Together they turned and approached the little group. Hey, Parker, Jeff said when he got close enough to see the young man. You good? The only thing keeping the tears from falling from the young man's eyes was the knot of men surrounding them. Yeah. I'm glad you made it back, man. The looks Tucker was giving her sent chills, and not the good kind, up Lisa's spine Tuesday afternoon as she sat across the table for lunch with him and his grandfather. It's like this whole kid on the bridge thing, Burke said, chewing on his steak. That kid's got no home life, no friends. The kids pick on him every day. What do we expect a kid in that situation to do? It's either kill everybody else or kill yourself. 2 choices, and they're both rotten. That's the kind of kid I want to reach with this thing. Lisa nodded, fighting to look interested even as her lunch crawled back up into her throat. 1 Luke a week should be punishment enough, but if she wasn't losing her perceptiveness, another one was sitting right across from her at this very moment. "So, what did Anson say?" Burke asked, jerking Lisa from her karate fantasy. "Oh, he gave me the number for Vincent Fletcher. He's like the police chief or something. I've got a meeting with him in the morning. As soon as I get him on board, I'll go back and talk to Hayes." "Fletcher's tough," Burke said, twisting his face out of normal. "Anson thought he would help?" "He thought it was worth a try," Lisa hedged. She wished her gaze would just quit sending alarm signals to her brain. This was no time for that. She pulled herself up to her full height. "Besides, I can be pretty tough myself." "Yeah, well, I hope so," Burke said unhappily. "Otherwise, Fletch just might chew you up and spit you out." Terrific. The ones she wanted to talk to didn't want to talk to her, and the ones she didn't want to get within 15 feet of ogled her like a cat looking at the catch of the day. "I'm not worried. I'm sure I can handle Fletcher. I've handled guys far, far worse." And she smiled sweetly at the cat sitting across the table from her. This has been To Protect and Serve, Volume 1 of the Courage series. Written by Staci Stallings, narrated by Becky Dowdy. Copyright 2012 by Staci Stallings. Production copyright 2014 by Staci Stallings. This has been a Braveheart Audiobooks production.
What's coming next? Find out. Like and subscribe to the Staci Stallings YouTube channel and never miss a second of the story.